Hi LEGO fans, and welcome to another episode of the Brick GP educational sessions, where I'm hoping to teach you a little bit about the human body using LEGO. So I recently went to a little event in Plymouth with part of my LEGO user group and actually got really positive feedback from some of the displays. So thank you very much for everyone who was there, and I hope that you will carry on following me with this journey. By the way, if there are particular bits that you're quite interested in, or if you've got any questions, please drop me a comment down below and I'll try and get back to you, and then we can talk about things in a bit more detail, possibly in a follow-up video. So today I was hoping to talk a little bit more about the breathing system, or the respiratory system as we call it in medicine. So what exactly is the respiratory system? The main aim of the respiratory system is for us to actually take in air into our bodies, and then our body is able to absorb the oxygen that's in the air, and actually then our cells can use it to actually work. But it's also really useful because when our cells work and use up the oxygen, they produce a waste product that's called carbon dioxide. Our breathing system also allows us to get rid of that carbon dioxide when we breathe out. So as we can see in this model here, the lungs, the airways, the heart, and also the food pipe or the esophagus are all contained within the chest cavity. Now that is in our chest up here, and it's protected all the way around by the ribs, and on the bottom it's separated from our tummies using a big muscle called the diaphragm. So the airways in our lungs actually look very similar to a tree, but actually that's the wrong way around. So what we've got is the main airway, which is called the trachea, and that divides into branches called the bronchi, and these then gradually divide into smaller and smaller branches down the tree until we make it down to the air pockets at the bottom. And if we take one of our little magnifying lenses and look right down at the bottom where the air bags are, these are actually called alveoli. Now, alveoli are the little bags in which the exchange of air happens with our bloodstream. As we said before, the oxygen coming into the bloodstream and the carbon dioxide coming out of the bloodstream into the air that we then breathe out. Now, the airways are actually made up of slightly harder rings of a material called cartilage, which is like a very soft bone. And in between those rings of cartilage, we have soft tissue, which allows it to be really elastic and really bendy so that when we move our bodies around, our airway is still nice and open. On the inside of that airway, there is a special layer of tissue called the mucosa. Now, the main aim of the mucosa is to not only warm up the air that we breathe in, so by the time it gets down to our lungs through all the airways, it's nice and warm, but it also creates a bit more of a humid environment and adds a bit of moisture to it. The other thing that it does with that is it helps to actually protect the airways from some of the things that we breathe in. So sometimes we breathe in things like dirt and dust, and what the layer of mucosa does, that inside layer of the airway, is to create a little bit of a barrier with the form of a slightly sticky substance called mucus. So mucus allows the dust and things to stick to it, and then we get rid of that mucus so it doesn't actually go all the way down into our lungs. So how is it that we actually breathe? Well, luckily, breathing is something that we really don't need to think about very much, and it's actually managed by a part of our brain and part of our nervous system called the autonomic nervous system, which sounds like automatic. Now, what that does is it tells our body how much we need to breathe, how quickly, but also how deeply, depending on what we're doing. For example, if you're asleep and you're nice and settled and relaxed, you don't need to breathe anywhere near as quickly as when you're exercising or running or cycling up a hill, for example. So when our brain tells our body to actually breathe, it sends messages down to the muscles all around the lungs. As we mentioned before, these are the muscles around the rib cage, both in between the ribs, but also the muscle below the lungs called the diaphragm. Now, when these muscles actually contract or tighten, they actually allow air to be sucked in. So this is a little model that I created that hopefully will show that in a little bit of detail. So we've got a balloon that's attached in the chamber, which is like the lung inside the chest cavity. So when the diaphragm muscle, which is this blue balloon on the bottom, actually contracts or becomes smaller, you can hopefully see that it allows air to be sucked in from the top and actually expand the balloon out a little bit. And this is what happens with our lungs. So when the air that we've sucked in finally makes it all the way down these different airways that, remember, the smaller and smaller branches all the way to the end, it makes it to those alveoli that we mentioned before, those sacs that actually look fairly similar to a bunch of grapes. So if you've got your main air pipe at the top, then is dividing into smaller and smaller branches, as you can see at the end of those branches, we've got little grapes. Now, in real life, it's more a cluster, a group of grapes at the end rather than a single one. Now, when it's in the alveoli, as we mentioned before, there's that swapping of air in and out. So as you can see in this little animation, we've got the white dots that represent oxygen that's coming in through the lungs at the top, that's then going through the barrier into the bloodstream where it attaches to our red blood cells or hemoglobin. And you then see the grey dots, which represent carbon dioxide coming from the bloodstream, going back through those same holes into the lungs where it's there blown out. Now, if you want to learn a little bit more about blood, I have done a video in the past about the blood system, so please do check it out. It's in the playlist below, and I'd love to hear your feedback on that. So there you have a whistle-stop tour of the respiratory system or the breathing system. I really hope you've enjoyed that and learned something about it. I'm going to be following this video up with a short video on asthma, trying to let you know a little bit more about what that is. Because asthma is such an important condition that actually does affect quite a few children out there. And I'm pretty sure that at least one person who's watching this video has asthma or has a family member who has asthma or a friend. So I'd love to maybe tell you a little bit more about it so you can understand it. And if you can, if you are enjoying these videos, remember, please do hit the subscribe button to watch more upcoming videos, hit the like button, or do please leave a comment. As mentioned before, if there are particular things that you would like to learn about, then please do leave me a comment to see if I can do something. I do have a couple of plans in my head of upcoming videos, and I am going to try and focus a little bit more on these educational videos. I know I've been concentrating on a lot of other things recently, but we will get those up and running again soon. So hopefully we'll catch you in the next one. Thanks a lot.